right, welcome back to another episode of the Game or Die podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Moore, and this episode, I'm going to be talking about a few more games that I've been playing. I've been playing kind of a lot lately. As of the last about week or so, I have played more games than I normally do in that time frame. I've been busy, I've been on the road, but I've actually used some of my on-the-road time to play through some games. Like in the last episode, I was talking about the Dave Mirra games and playing some of the Dave Mirra PlayStation 1 BMX games. I actually got through Dave Mirra 1 and Dave Mirra 2 all the way through. And I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but the third, there was never a Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 3, which was a real bummer because I loved those games. They were really fun. I know a lot of people have issues with them, and yeah, they do have issues, but I still think they're really, really fun for the most part. And basically, there was going to be a Dave Mirra 3 game, but they did not do what Dave Mirra wanted. And so basically, they went to him saying, hey, we're going to make a third game in your franchise, and but we're going to make it a little bit more raunchy and attitude-ish. You know, back in that time frame, it was all the rage. And so there was a game, or Z-Axis actually was making the third Dave Mirra game, and they showed it off to Dave Mirra, and he said, no, this is terrible. And I mean, this is all kind of the rumors of what actually happened. But basically, Dave Mirra saw the game, and he did not like it, and he did not want to license his name on it. So they just called it by something else, removed the pro BMXers out of the game, and just made it something different. And it was a game called BMX Triple X. And yeah, the Triple X means exactly what you think it means. It's a really, really bad game. And it's not even the mechanics so much as everything outside of the actual mechanics itself. It basically plays exactly like Dave Mirra 2, but they put a huge emphasis on changing the demographic from, you know, kids and teenagers to, I feel like 8-year-olds. Not even, no, like 8th graders, sorry. Because this whole game is about being as dirty and raunchy and filthy and just having a foul mouth and just everything associated with that type of, you know, mentality. The game feels like it was written by a pair of junior high kids. They have a lot of swearing in it, a lot of crude jokes, a lot of poop jokes and fart jokes and wiener jokes. And it is unbearable. And it's a bummer too, because I remember when that game came out and I was like, this is stupid. And I was kind of like around the age that it felt like I was supposed to be at for that game. Like they were targeting it towards my age group, I believe. But it fell so far below that it felt like it was really more towards teenagers than junior hires than anything else, because that's the type of humor. It's embarrassing. It's an embarrassing title because basically the whole game itself revolves around all these objectives, just like the other games do. You got to do this trick here, do this and do that, get this score point. And it's really cool the way the game is built, but the levels are bad. The objectives are bad. Like, just in the first level, it takes place in the Bronx. And the first level, one of the objectives is to grind a pimp's car, or grind a pole above a pimp's car so that birds poop on it. This is literally one of the objectives. There's also another objective where the pimp has a dog, a pink poodle, and you have to get the poodle on your bike and then do a bunch of tricks and get a score of about, I think it's 20,000 points within about 1 minute. to get the dog horny and then and then you drop it off to another dog in the dog park, and they do it. And it's just like, it's not even eye rolling. It's embarrassing, because that's exactly what this game is. It's trying to have attitude. It's trying to be edgy and in your face about everything. There's a ton of, stripper type stuff too, where the whole video was sponsored by a strip club or the whole video game. And they partnered up with this strip club, I guess, and they literally have unlockable stripper videos. Like, oh, look at this. And it was like, and this was like not even at a time when the internet was a thing still. So it's like, it's just the dumbest thing. It's one of the worst video games I've ever played. It's on the same lines of, what do you call it? Oh man, Leisure Suit Larry. It's embarrassing. It's disgusting. It's a really crappy video game on top of that. And it's just a bummer that the game even came out. And so I played a little bit of it because I never played it before. And I was like, well, if I'm going through the entire series of Dave Mirra, I got to technically play number 3. And I was just like, I can't even finish this. I can't even finish that game because it's so bad. And there's very rare games that I sit down and I play and I can't even finish it, or I can't even get close to finishing it because it just made me so upset. And I'm not talking about like fake nerd rage about, this game is so bad, like angry video game nerd type stuff. It's like most of those games are bad, but they're not the worst of the worst. This is the worst of the worst. There's no redeeming quality whatsoever. It's a worthless game and has a very lame attitude towards all this stuff. So I put that down and I played some other stuff instead. And I don't know how or why, but I really wanted to play Road Rash. And I played Road Rash last year. Or a couple years ago. And I played 1, 2, and 3 on the Sega Genesis, and I beat them. I remember staying up all night getting the final bike for the first Road Rash with my friend Andrew when it was brand new back in the early 90s on the Genesis. But I never really played much of 2 or 3. I rented them when they came out, but I never really got into them. So a couple years ago, I sat down and I played through all the original 3 Road Rash games. And then while I was on the road, I was like, man, I just want to play something. And so I picked up Road Rash for the PlayStation. And this is basically kind of like a redone or a remake of Road Rash 1, where it takes place in California, just like the original Road Rash. And that's what separates 1, 2, and 3, basically. They're all very much the same type of game. Road Rash 1 takes place in California, Road Rash 2 takes place in the United States, and Road Rash 3 takes place in the world. Kind of like the Cruisin' series. Cruisin' USA was the first one, Cruisin' World was the second one, and Cruisin' Exotica was the third one. And so I basically sat down and played this remake, and I remember when it came out, my cousin Andy got it for the PC, I think, or maybe it was the PlayStation. I can't remember. I just remember I was at their house and watching this game and going, oh, Road Rash, awesome. And it was totally, totally different than what I was used to with the Genesis version. This one is very, very different in the way that it basically takes a lot of the formula from Road Rash 1 and redoes it all. Basically, Road Rash for the PlayStation it's got right off the bat, you get FMV, full motion video. You get these intro videos of motorcycles and bikers and cops and, real people on motorcycles. And it's a really cool style, the way that they do this. You get the intro video, it pumps you up for the game. And then when you get to the main menu, they have this weird art style to it. and it's really, really cool. You don't see anything like this anymore. It's very a realistic art style. It's not cartoony, but the facial features and distortion of the people are very cartoony. It almost feels like a 90s music video. Soundgarden and excuse me, Soundgarden and Michael Jackson, like the Speed Demon music video, where you have a lot of real people, but with like facial distortion and stuff like that. Great big smiles or weird popping eyes, or their mouths are just, disproportionate to their heads. And it's really, really cool. I loved the art style of this game, but it's only in the menus itself. And so basically what you do, just like the original games, is you have this menu where you go basically are in a bar and you can go talk to other bikers. And this is kind of the bummer part. Like, this could have been so much more than what it was, but it's a very, very small game, really. In the menu, you go to this bar and you can either go to the bulletin board to select races, or you can go to schmooze with other bikers. When you select schmooze with other bikers, you basically are given 3, maybe 4 people that you interact with, and you don't get to walk around. You have no character movements or anything like that. It's just a static screenshot of a couple characters, 1 per screen. And basically, you have different bikers. You have a character you select, but you never see that character unless you're racing in the game. So you select your character, you go to this bar, you go schmooze with your bikers, and then you have a static screenshot of the biker you're talking to. Let's say Cindy or Slim Jim or Axel or Bazooka or whatever. I can't remember the other guy's name. I think there was Joe. It wasn't Bazooka Joe. It's like Downtown Joe or something like that. And they have their big cartoony face on the big, center screen. And then it has just a sentence, maybe 2, of text dialogue that they're talking at you. Sometimes, depending on how the races go, sometimes they'll be friendlier. Sometimes they'll be kind of more neutral, just kind of saying something like, hey, stay out of my way. Or if you keep beating them up through the races and you knock them off your bike and stuff, or their bikes and stuff like that, and you keep getting into confrontations with them throughout the actual gameplay, they will turn hostile towards you and start yelling at you and stuff. And so it's a really cool little snippet. But this could have been done so much more in depth. There could have been so much more to this. And that's kind of the bummer part of this whole game, is it really is bare bones. There's not a whole lot to it. There's a story mode where you progress through each level and you level up your character technically. You just advance to a new stage and you get money for winning, and you can put that money towards a new bike. But that's it. That's all the progression there is in the story mode. With Thrash mode, it's just literally like an exhibition in a sports game or something like that, where you just get right into the gameplay. You race and you're right there. And what's a bummer about this game too is there is so much loading. Everything is very, very slow in the actual game itself, like the menus. Once you get into the actual race, it's not a problem, but you push start, it takes several seconds to load into the menu. And then every, button press, if you need to go to the bulletin board or go to schmooze or go out to the motorcycle shop to get a new bike or selecting a new bike or even going into the options menu, every literal button press is a 1 to 2 second lag. And it just takes forever to get anywhere. So what I did is I basically started up the game. I went directly into the options menu, did all my options, and save stated it there just so that I didn't have to worry about setting the options up later on. And it's unnecessary. I'm assuming just because it was newer technology, PlayStation, Electronic Arts learning how to work with the PC or the CD technology that was brand new for the time for PlayStation. I'm assuming that's the reason why it is. But it's just, it is a talking point. It was something that bothered me every time I played that game till completion. It's like, man, I don't want to push any buttons. There was times where I didn't even want to schmooze to my characters because I knew it was going to be a minute or 2 minutes before I even get back into the game. And I just wanted to continue racing. And once you get into the bulletin board area, you can basically pick races. And there are 5 races to choose from. There's a couple cities, a farm, and, like a foresty area, and then the PCH or Pacific Coast Highway. There's a beach, riding along the ocean type of race. And it's really, really cool. That's where this game, again, just it feels like, oh man, they could have done so much more because it's really a replay of the first game. You just have a beach in a city instead of, a lot of rolling hills and highways and stuff like that. But the gameplay itself is Road Rash to a T. You're on a bike, you start a race, you have about 15 people in the race, and you're able to have melee combat. Some people have billy clubs or chains or pipes or anything like that, and you can grab them. If you time your button presses right, you can kick other bikes into oncoming traffic. You can kick them into signposts or off the road for them to crash. If you crash, you fall off your bike, you go skidding across, you get some road rash, you get back up and you walk over to your bike, you pick it up and you start again. It is road rash like anything else. Like it is just, I love the Road Rash series. I always have. It's been one of my favorite series of all time. It's up there in my top 5 of Genesis games for sure. Probably my top Genesis game. Maybe Toe Jam and Earl, I can't remember. But man, there is something about Road Rash. It is so fun. And so I played this game to completion. It took a while, but it was really, really fun. And the way you win the game is basically every race. When you start out, you get an FMV cutscene. You get this a couple canned cutscenes of, people getting on motorcycles and revving their engines and then riding off, and then your race starts, and then you get into the actual game. When you win or lose or even get busted by the cops, you get an FMV cutscene again. And that's kind of where most of the budget for this game, I'm assuming, went. Because they rented cop cars, they rented motorcycles. There was a lot of staffers that were in the crowds for the shots. And it's a really, really fun thing. You can tell that the people who made this game loved it. That's what's really cool about FMV games. Like, my wife Elizabeth and I have been watching a lot of FMV gameplay stuff. We watched Phantasmagoria 2. Puzzle of Flesh, playthrough of that on Giant Bomb just a little bit ago, like a couple weeks ago. And she was like, we were just sitting around. I put Giant Bomb Infinite on where they just kind of loop all their videos on Twitch. And we were watching it. Phantasmagoria 2 came on. And like, I don't like that game. I never really played it, but watching, this FMV game and watching people play through it, it was fun. And it was kind of a time killer at the end of the evening. We're just kind of sitting around bored, not really doing anything. And we started watching this and it was really fun. So we got really into that and we started talking about other FMV games. And so maybe that was why I went back to Road Rash 1 on PlayStation, is because it does have FMV cutscenes and I really, really liked them. So that's probably where the budget went for this game. And you can tell it was a labor of love. The staff really loved playing or acting in this game and being part of the actual game that they were making. And it's cheesy now looking back at it, but looking back at the time it was made, in the time frame, It was incredible. And I remember some of those FMV cutscenes just vaguely. I was still pretty young. And I don't remember every single thing about that game, but it was still just a joy. It's really cool. And yeah, the cutscenes may be cheesy and hokey now, but back then, man, it was something. It was incredible. It was technological breakthroughs and leaps in video games back then. So I played through the game. Once you start and you finish the game, or finish each level, you get another cutscene of a winning area. Basically, there's a couple different canned ones that, they shuffle through, and you'll see the same cutscenes over and over and over again throughout the play of the game. But holy crap, this game is difficult. It's much more difficult than the first one. And the reason why it's difficult is because of the speed of the game and the amount of stuff, the amount of hazards on screen as well. Basically, you have a race and the frame rate is insane. It's 60 frames per second and you are blazing through, and there's so many twists and curves. And especially with the first level, the city level, you can choose your own, but again, I just kind of went default and I went through every level multiple times. You have about, let's say at the very beginning of the game, first race out, you have the cityscape race, the city. And you got about 5.5, maybe 6 miles of road that you need to race through. You are flying at crazy speeds. And yeah, the race might only take you about 4 or 5 minutes to complete, but they feel a lot longer. And the reason why they feel a lot longer is because you're riding so fast and there is so much crap coming at you. There's so many trees and pedestrians. There are pedestrians littered throughout. It feels like, man, this was in the era of, you couldn't really do a lot of killing people in video games yet. It was just starting to kind of get to that point with like GTA, and that was about it, and maybe Carmageddon. But you're on a motorcycle and these pedestrians it feels like a death wish. They are just coming at you. And so they're walking across lanes of traffic and you run them over and they scream, and there's no blood, but and that's the thing too, is like there's no real incentive for hitting people. But at the time it was so novel that you do it anytime you could. But now, after we've gotten decades of, murdering people in video games, that's not desensitized us, but the appeal has worn off because there's no incentive, there's no reward for hitting people. It's more of a hindrance than anything else. You jump up, you get that scream of that person. That can be kind of funny, but you do slow down. You take a hit in speed, and especially if you are racing trying to get first place, that can be a big bummer. So you try to avoid people, and then there's a ton more cars, oncoming traffic, traffic that you're going with, and they all just are there and they're fast. Sometimes you can clip them and just get a big hit in reduced speed, but sometimes you'll go flying. And once you go flying, man, it is rough, especially if you're aiming for first place. And also the cops are there. And if you fall off your bike where a cop is, they will bust you right away and you got to do the whole thing over. And you actually get money taken away from you instead of just not finishing the race. So if you keep messing up in front of a cop and keep getting busted, you're going to lose money and not gain it. And you're actually going to lose progress for getting a new bike, because you always do need to get a new bike every level that you progress. So the way you get to a new level is basically you race and qualify and finish in second, first, or third place. And once you finish that race, you have 5 races to get through. Like I said, the city, the forest, PCH. You do 5 races, And once you do that, you level up and you go to the second level, and then you do 5 more races. The thing is, they're all the same landscape. They're all the same courses. Every time you level up, they're just faster, longer courses. Same starting place, same ending place, or different ending places because they just get longer and longer and longer. So you get 5 levels to get through, and it does take a while because, near the end of the game, you're racing for about 17 or 18 miles, and that's a good, 8-9 minutes of racing. And when you're at that high level, you have the fastest bike, and it is blister paced speed. It is crazy. You are flying through this stuff, and you're crashing all the time, unless you're really good and you avoid all that stuff. But there are things that are just impossible to avoid sometimes. Your lane splitting, going through oncoming and traffic and stuff like that. And then there's something in this game that I've never seen in a Road Rash game before. There is branching paths, which were really cool. So basically, you can choose, kind of like when you play Outrun, the arcade game, and you have to choose left or right, and you kind of get on a highway, and then you have a little time to pick if you're going to go to the left off-ramp or the right off-ramp, and it will take you to a different area. And if you choose a different one of these options, one of them is very narrow and very hard to navigate space, but it's kind of a shortcut as well. So it's really cool. You didn't see that in the first 3 Road Rash games. And also in the later levels, when you avoid the cops for so long, they will literally put up roadblocks. It only happens a couple times, but you will see roadblocks there, police barricades, and you can either try, like I did a couple times, and try and get through them, but you will crash it and die pretty much because you're going, 160 miles per hour or whatever, and you just hit a cop car and you go flying. Or sometimes there might be a little mound of dirt that you can actually hit like a ramp and jump over the cop cars, which is insane. It's so cool. So, oh man, it was really fun. So you finish all these, you get to the 5th level, you finish all 5 levels for the 5th level, and then you're done. You beat the game technically, and you get a winning screen, you get a new FMV cutscene, and that's pretty much it, and that's kind of where I finished the game because I was like, well, I'm done with the main story mode. I'm going to go play something else. So played Road Rash for the PlayStation. Then I moved on right to Road Rash 3D because I actually never played this game. And oh boy, when they moved to polygons, they really changed the physics of the game. And there's some good ideas in this game, and I didn't finish it. I only played maybe about an hour of it or so. There's, again, some FMV stuff, and there's gangs in there as well, which are kind of cool, but they're very loose and not really put together very well. You don't get a real sense. You kind of have to, you have a whole bunch of little ideas that should go together, and they could if they just explained it a little bit better. But this game takes the formula of the game that I was just talking about, the remake of Road Rash, and throws it into a polygon type of game instead of sprite-based. And when they did that, they messed with the physics. Turning is terrible. You're sliding all over the place. It feels very, very slow. And then as soon as you get the next bike, it feels way too fast. I got through the first level, made it to the second level. I got a new bike, and I only got the second. There's a couple different bikes you can get. But I always chose, there's the more sporty type, Kawasaki Ninja type of bike. But I've always grown accustomed to cruisers. The Hogs, the Harley Davidsons and stuff like that. And so you can actually pick a cruiser bike in this game, which is actually really cool. All the bikes in the older Road Rashes, they're all the same. There's just the speed is in handling is a little bit different. But these actually have different models. And so Stuff looks different. And when you play it and you get that new bike, I got the second bike. I started out with the baseline cruiser, got the second out of 3 bikes, and that second bike is too fast. Every turn is squirrely. You're sliding all over the place. And that's the thing too, is when you're turning left or right, you are immediately skidding out, almost out of control. And it takes this weird fishtail effect into play too. And it doesn't feel right. Especially if you're coming from the Road Rash franchise, you're playing all those games. You get to this game when it came out, and I was just like, oh, I can imagine. I never, like I said, I never played it, but I can imagine what the disappointment would be like for playing that 3D version. And that's kind of where I stopped with Road Rash, because I didn't know if I wanted to finish it or not, and I wanted to do a little something different. I only had a couple days off this week. And so I spent my main day, and I started playing this earlier last weekend, but I really fell in hardcore deep into Subnautica Zero Below. And I played the original Subnautica when it was out in early access in 2014. And if you don't know what Subnautica is, it's basically Minecraft underwater is literally the most boiled down that I can make it. You are crash landed on this alien planet that is covered in water. There's very, 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 very little land, just a couple islands here or there, and they're very small for the most part. But beginning the game, probably the first 5 hours or 6 hours of the gameplay is all underwater, and 99% of the game in that, I'd say about 90% of the game is underwater. And so you have a life craft, kind of a little life pod that crashes with you and that you're in. And so you can have that as your base, basically. And then you go around, you just search in just the little area. You only have a very small amount of air that you can breathe underwater for 15 seconds or so. And so you just go down for 15 seconds at a time and kind of start gathering stuff to kind of survive. It's a survival game, crafting survival. Like I said, like Minecraft. Basically, what you do is you pick up some stuff, you put them together with your little fabricator unit that you have in your life pod, and you start building different stuff. You build a scanner so that you can scan the environments and the flora and fauna and stuff like that, and kind of learn a little bit more about the world that you crash landed on. It's an alien planet. And then you craft some fins so that you can swim a little bit faster. And then you craft an oxygen tank so you can dive a little bit deeper. And then so on and so forth until you get a little submersible glider so that you can go faster and a little bit deeper while still with that little small amount of air that you have on your air tank. And then you get a bigger oxygen tank so you can deep dive a little bit deeper and a little bit farther. And then you get a submersible, a little tiny submarine, single-person submarine, where you can carry some stuff. And from there, you start building out a fabricator unit. So you have this little unit that can actually build stuff, an actual underwater base. And oh my gosh, that's where the game really opens up. This underwater base that you can use, you build solar panels. So any light from the sun will power up your underwater base and provide oxygen so you can walk around. You have, lockers and stuff like that, nuclear reactor cores so that you don't have to use the sunlight anymore, and bioreactors so that you can use plant life and animal life to power up your bases, lights, list goes on and on. This game back in 2014, it changed a lot. There was a lot of terraforming. Back then, they don't do that anymore. So now it's a static map, and there's different biomes and stuff. And man, go look up Subnautica if you haven't. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it might seem a little bit childish. And when that game was coming out, and it was basically described as Minecraft underwater, I went, ugh. But I played it, and I went, oh, this is very different than Minecraft. It does have a very more interesting art style and art direction to it. It's not blocky, it doesn't have that very crappy graphical look to it. It looks sleek. It's a interesting looking game. It's very sleek design. But the main reason that drew me towards that game was VR. They added in VR to that game in early access, and I played it I probably put close to about 90 to 100 hours of that game. And literally over before VR got put in, I probably played about 7 hours of that game. Everything else has been played in VR with that game. And I remember in 2017, right at the very beginning of the year of 2017, I think it was like January 10th or something, they finally released it out of early access. It was in development for about 4 years of early access. And every once in a while I would play, maybe another 10 hours. I would restart my game, and spend the first 10 hours base building a little area where, I knew it was safe and, going deeper and deeper, but there was story to it. There is, and that's again, another reason why I liked this over Minecraft is that the story is so much better. I mean, Minecraft, there is no story, technically there's objectives, but it's more just build what you can when you can and get to the Ender world or whatever, the underworld area. And that's pretty much it. But what I did is I waited until it was out of early access to really play through the game all the way through in VR. And I spent, I think it was somewhere around 19 or 20 hours in that game in VR the entire time, playing through that game, beginning to end. There's a story there, and it takes a while. And you can go at your own pace because, again, it's a lot of exploration and just kind of, you can spend, 100 hours just base building the coolest looking base that you can possibly imagine. But that does take time. But it's all just very bare bones. There's some audio cues from your digital assistant basically saying, hey, your oxygen is low, go to the surface, resurface before you die. Your power is being turned off or turned back on. Welcome aboard, Captain. That's about it for the original game. But last April, I believe, they announced Subnautica Zero Below, brand new sequel to the Subnautica game. And I went, oh, I bought that game day it was announced. I was like, done, pre-ordered, ready. And it's like, oh, it'll be available, in the next day or two. And I was like, great, awesome. So I bought that game. I came home after I was out of town. I sat down and I was super excited. And I was like, why isn't VR working? And then I started looking online and they said, we're not doing VR for this game. And I was bummed out. One of the best things about VR is that you get encompassed in this world. You get you live in that world. Everything becomes so much more real when it's all around you and you're immersed in that world. And man, there's a whole thing called thalassophobia, I believe, and it's the fear of like the depths of the sea. And I don't have that. I have a deep found respect for the ocean. And there are things that I get freaked out about by the ocean itself, the depth of the ocean, whales and stuff like that. But at the same time, I think they're magnificent, beautiful creatures. And looking at these animals from a distance is awesome. But you put me up close to a whale in the depth of the ocean where I have nothing keeping me safe from that thing swallowing me whole, which obviously they're not going to, and all that stuff. I'm not thinking that they're going to irrationally eat me. But, there's that a little bit of doubt and fear in my body and my brain. And it's irrational for the most part. But I just think it is crazy. And so this game, it plays on some of those things because you are out in the hard 200 meters below the ocean level, and you're exploring these alien worlds in this game in VR. It feels real. It is scary sometimes, and you don't know what's out there. Sometimes it might be a little friendly creature, sometimes not so much. And man, there are Leviathan type creatures that they call them and all this stuff in this game, and it is crazy. So I've owned this game for the last year and I haven't really touched it. I put about 15 minutes into it. And that's the thing too, is this game does something completely different where this game started off as you are a named character and there is a ton of story right out of the gate and it's all voice acted. And that's the main difference between this. Also, the planet that you're on is a totally different planet and it's an Arctic planet. It's all frozen over. It's all ice and snow. So you're this character named Robin. You have a sister named Sam. You start out on land in a base and you're just doing your normal scientific job. You're a scientist exploring this planet, with a big company. I think it's called Altair or something like that. And for whatever happens, there's a big avalanche, your base gets destroyed, and you have to run away because things are falling from the sky. There's rockets and all this stuff, kind of like an Armageddon type situation. And you have to take refuge in an area that you have no contact with your base or your sister or anything. The Sky HQ, up in space. So you are just left alone on this planet in an area that you don't know, and you have to survive. And it's that's where the Subnautica, Minecraft underwater gameplay starts. But why I started playing this game was basically they said, the developers, they were like, hey, this game is still not done yet. We're still in early access, but we had some stuff go down with our story writer. I don't know if it's good or bad or not. It's been very vague as far as I know. But we're rewriting the entire story. The story is completely being rewritten from scratch. And I'm like, dude, this game has been out for over a year or almost a year now. And you're rewriting it from scratch. You're doing a completely different story. And so they were basically saying, hey, the old story is going away. We're giving you a heads up because you're going to lose all your saves. And I didn't really have a save to begin with. I had about 15 minutes of save, and all of that is beginning story stuff anyways. So I was like, you know what? I remember doing that a couple times with the original Subnautica. I would like to see where the story was going before it gets wiped away from existence forever. And again, that's the one thing about video games is they're also... They're almost, you can say they're living and breathing in a sense because they're always being changed. Live games as a service type stuff, they're always being changed. So no game is going to be able to be preserved anymore. And it's a weird, weird thing. So like I said, it's not something that we've really had to deal with, but, there's not really many examples in other mediums. Movies, they're done. Once they're done, except for the, George Lucas Star Wars experience stuff. But once a movie is filmed and completed and put out, it's not really a whole lot you can do. You can do something like maybe Deadpool where they put a PG-13 version out or whatever, or it's made for or a TV version out and dub some lines, but that's about it. They're not completely rewritten and redone. And still the same quote unquote thing. And you can't get them anymore. Video games are so different and weird nowadays because this story will never be able to be played after, I think the next week or two. So I spent about 14 hours playing through the story mode of this game that's not going to exist in a couple weeks. And I thought it was fine, but I really wish it was in VR. And I had a blast playing it. They really do improve a lot of stuff. It is in early access. It is not finished, so there are definitely some bugs and weird things that are happening. But I played through a good chunk of the story so far, and I'm really finding it very enjoyable. There are some parts where I get confused. I get a little sidetracked. You meander for an hour or so trying to find one little thing to scan so that I can build this new thing in my base or on my little sea truck, as they call it, which is basically like your little submarine that you can add modules to now, which is really cool. They basically, it's the little tiny single-person submersible in the original Subnautica was called the Sea Moth. And it was basically a little tiny submarine that you had a little bit of capacity to hold a few things, and it was charged by some batteries. And so you had to craft batteries every once in a while and stuff like that, and that was it. And then later on, once you go deeper and build more bases, get more technology available to you, you can actually build a huge, gigantic nuclear submarine that will literally house your little tiny sea moth in it as well. So you can take out this big, gigantic submarine, this U-boat, thing called the Cyclops. And then inside the Cyclops is basically this little tiny submersible that, if your submarine can't go squeeze into little tiny crevices and stuff, your tiny submersible can. And so, it's like these Russian nesting dolls type of thing. They completely redid the Sea Moth, and instead of the Sea Moth, it's called the Sea Truck. And it's kind of the same thing, but it's more of a, like those big, tall Mercedes vans, It kind of almost looks like that. It's very small. It's only probably about maybe, 6 feet long or something like that. It's very small, but it has this door in the back that can attach multiple modules. And as you progress through the game, you get these multiple modules that will do different things. There's a fabricator module that's a little extended, another 6-piece section that attaches to your sea truck that you can start building stuff. And then there's a storage module that just houses lockers that you can throw all your crap that you pick up and, mine and all that type of stuff. And then there's a sleeper module that will literally, it has a bed and a jukebox, and you can put a couple pictures up and stuff like that. I just got that, and it's got a cool glass ceiling so you can go to sleep underwater, and you can just see out into the ocean or in the sky if you're close enough to the surface. And then there's, I haven't gotten all the parts of it yet, but I just found parts for a module that will house what is called the prawn. And the prawn is basically like the power loader from Aliens, but it's an underwater version of the power loader. So it actually contains oxygen. You just sit in and you can breathe. But it's kind of like a power loader. It's like this mechanized exoskeleton suit that you can use to get ore. Basically, you can grind out ore, and you can find massive deposits of ore, of minerals like crystal, diamonds, quartz, stuff like that. You can get a lot out of there. So it's freaking rad, and I love this game. And so when they announced that they were going to do a sequel, I was in love with it. They announced that, the story was going to be rewritten, so I started playing it. I'm still super bummed there's no VR for this because, again, Subnautica 1 was my kind of go-to for saying, this is the way you do VR. It is a VR game. You sit down and you are just immersed into it. And it's one of the most incredible aspects to go into VR, into this video game, and live inside of it pretty much. So I dropped quite a few hours into Subnautica Zero Below. It's, like I said, it's a lot of the same type of story or gameplay mechanics. It's just with different stuff, updated. There is also the story that I got to the point for the point so far is I met someone, and there's actual other characters that are showing up, and you're not just alone on a planet. There's other people out there, and so it's really interesting and cool, and I'm kind of bummed that the story is going to be rewritten because I played the experimental branch where the new story is put in. And again, it's early access, so this is all going to change anyways or be added to it. But you're basically escaping from a ship, and you land right into the ocean area where you start playing the game for reals in the older story about 15 minutes later. And then everything else is in this exact same so far. So the only thing is you don't have a sister anymore so far. And, there's no sister interaction of that Sam character. But everything else is so far the exact same as far as I got. And I got about 6 or 7 hours into it, I think, yesterday. And, oh, man, I love Subnautica. I think it's one of the coolest franchises, new franchises out there. And people who just immediately dismiss it, like I did, where they think, oh, Minecraft underwater, whatever, that's for babies, or that's stupid, Minecraft's dumb or whatever. I'm like, it's really not. It's totally different. It's the same type of gameplay style where you are surviving and building stuff and crafting stuff. And there's so much of that in tons of games now anyways, that it doesn't really mean a whole lot. So many games take that survival crafting element. You have games like Ark or Rust or whatever as well. The Forest, all these types of games where it's a lot of survival mechanics, crafting mechanics. But there is a story there. Like I said, it's a very sleek, beautiful looking game. There are environments in this game, in Subnautica and Subnautica Zero Below, that I can't even imagine. Like, my imagination isn't even that good to think up some of these otherworldly looking locations. You don't see that in the real world, for sure. But it does take some aspects of it, and it's just underwater. That's the thing is, my wife and I are big marine type of people. We love the ocean and the creatures of the ocean, and so you don't see a lot of ocean exploration in video games. You very rarely ever do see that, and so a game comes along that really loves that deep exploration of the ocean and what is out there. Like, some of my favorite documentaries are documentaries from stuff like James Cameron. Say what you will about the dude and his divorces and Mary Linda Hamilton cheating on her and stuff like that. Who James Cameron is as a director, even. Like, he did Titanic and Terminator and Avatar. I don't care about his... I love Terminator 2, by the way. The Terminator franchise I love. But his love for the ocean, is something that I really do admire. The fact that there's this famed Oscar-winning director who directed some of the most iconic and most expensive and most record-breaking movies of all time. And instead of making movies, he changed his career to explore the ocean depths and create a submarine that broke a world record and went into the Mariana Trench and saw creatures that never have been seen before. Like, that's actually really inspiring to me. Like I said, say what you will about the dude himself, and I've heard, he's not the nicest person in the world, but man, do you really expect someone like that to be the nicest person in the world? But this guy did so much, and that's why I love watching those documentaries that he's made. Just going into the ocean and exploring these dark depths of the ocean that no one has ever seen. Light has never touched those parts before in the history of the world. It's incredible. It's really awe-inspiring. And so that's why I love this game so much, is because it takes my passion for the ocean and creatures. And I'm not even a big space or alien person, but when you make these aliens interesting, because all the creatures that you come across in these games, they're alien life forms. It's just they're on another world under the ocean, but they're all not real animals. They take on some of the, characteristics of real life animals. And yeah, there are squid type creatures, but there's not an actual squid in there. It's a squid-like creature. So, I've been playing a lot of that lately, and it's a bummer too because, again, it's in early access. It's not finished. It's not a game that I can just sit down and play all the way through. And progress will be wiped as well, so it's not really worth spending 100 hours, even 10 hours building these intricate bases when you don't know if your save is going to be wiped or not. And so that's why when I would play the original Subnautica, I would play it for a while. I'd get my fix. I'd go hardcore into it for a weekend or a week straight, and then I wouldn't touch it for another year or so. And so that's probably what I'm going to do with this. I'm probably done playing Subnautica Zero Below for just a little bit until I hear a new update. And there's a couple other games that I really want to get to. I haven't played them yet but I want to get into more Satisfactory. I talked about that on one of the early podcasts from last year. I really got into that game. I think it was maybe around May or so, maybe May or June of last year. I played Satisfactory a lot for a good 20 hours or so as well. And I've really loved that game. But that's, again, another early access game. There's a huge update that just came out recently last month, and it sounds rad, but it basically makes me having to relearn that entire game and probably put another 10 to 15 hours into that game to really get back to where I was from the last time I played it. And that's the thing with early access games, it's like being an early adopter, for tech. You're going to go through some growing pains. You're going to lose a lot of stuff that other people don't have to, or you're going to have to deal with a lot of crap that other people who wait to play these games when they're finished out in version 1.0 will never have to deal with. They don't even know. They don't know the struggles that we went through type of stuff. So I want to play Satisfactory, and I want to get back into Division 2. Division 2, if you didn't listen to any of the other podcasts or my Game of the Year stuff from last year, Division 2 was my main second game of the year. It was number 2 on my list. And it was a close in-between Division 2 and Toe Jam and Earl Back in the Groove. So, Division 2, I soloed. I played through it by myself, and I loved every minute of it. And I haven't really even kept up with any of the updates or anything like that. Like I said, I finished that game and I moved on to the next thing. And I don't replay games very often. I played a little bit with my friend Jeff online on Xbox a little bit, but I mainly play PC. And so I had to restart from scratch and all that stuff. And so they've been doing some updates, but they didn't have a ton of stuff. And I didn't really hear anything spectacular about it. So I didn't boot it up and play more. But they just released a DLC pack that takes you back to New York, the location of the dollar flu, where it all started. And this is basically Division 1. So there's a lot of areas from Division 1 imported into now DLC for Division 2. And I thought that's kind of cool. It's not the winter anymore, though. And that's what I really liked about Division 1 was the winter location and everything. Everything's in the summer now in Division 2. But Division 2 DLC, I haven't played yet. I haven't really even seen a whole lot of it. It looks like more Division 2. And that game is so good. It's so good. So I really want to play more Division 2. And I think I'm going to this hopefully next week. I'm going to be not traveling this week, and so I'll have some extra time after work that I can hopefully play if I'm not too tired. Maybe just sit down for, a mission, but those missions are sometimes really long. So I'll figure it out, but that's pretty much what I've been doing. I haven't really watched much. My wife and I been going through Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I've been watching since it first aired, but my wife never watched it. And so we were really trying to figure out something to watch. And we were like, oh, man. And I was like, man, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a great show. You got to watch it. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. And I was like, we have nothing else to watch. We're going to sit down and eat dinner. Let's just kind of watch this while we eat dinner. And if you don't like it within the first couple of episodes, we can watch something else. And she goes, okay. So we sat down, we started watching. She loved it. And I was like, yes. So we've been watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And what's really cool, too, is the 7th season just started. So we got all the way through the first 6 seasons and then immediately got to go right into season 7, which is really cool. And so we've been enjoying that. Haven't really watched any movies lately. It's just been kind of a weird time. I haven't really felt like watching any movies or anything like that. So someday, when I'm in the mood, I'll watch a movie or two. But I've been reading some comics while I've been on the road and watching some comic videos and stuff like that. I did watch 2 movies. I take that back. They were comic movies, and they were Superman Red Sun and Batman Gotham by Gaslight. And if you know me, I love me some Elseworlds stories. I love the Elseworlds stuff, the what if storylines. They're some of my favorite stories in comics, and DC's been doing this for quite a while now, as they've been taking these graphic novels that have been story arcs that have been some of people's favorites for years and years, decades even, and they're finally turning them into movies. But I'm not a big fan of the animation, and there's a lot of other stuff. I actually wrote up a Superman Red Sun / Gotham by Gaslight review type thing. Probably put that up on the website right after this. But go ahead and go to gameordie.net and you can read my reviews of all that crap. But DC animation, Batman animated series, Superman animated series, Batman Beyond animated series, and even the Justice League animated series, Justice League / Justice League Unlimited, some of my favorite cartoons of all time. DC's in this really weird place right now, and their animation they're finally doing some good stories, but they're doing them the wrong way, I think. I'm not really a big fan of the stories, the way they're telling these stories. I think they could be done a lot better. And so, I have some gripes, but hey, they are, animated, movies of these great stories with these characters that I love. So I watched them. They were fine. They weren't great, though. Been reading some comics. One of the comics that I would highly suggest recommending reading, 6 issues, came out, I believe, last year, maybe 2 years ago at this point. It's called Deceased. It's a DC comic, story arcs, again, 6 issues long. Shouldn't take you that long to read. And it's called Deceased. So deceased, the word deceased, dead. And basically what this is, I won't spoil anything right now. Maybe I'll write a review or something. I'm not sure. Maybe talk about it on the next podcast or never talk about it again. I won't do spoilers, but basically to set up the plot, is Darkseid basically creates this, what is called the anti-life equation. And it's this technovirus that spreads across all of humanity. And anyone who looks at a screen, a phone, a computer, a TV, monitor, anything that has a digital information being displayed on it, is basically there's this technovirus that will infect the human body and you will kill everyone, basically become zombies. You will die. And this happens throughout the entire DC universe. So you got Superman, Batman, Flash, Wonder Woman, all the villains, the Joker, and all this stuff. And it is incredible. It's really cool. So I would highly recommend, if you like comics at all, man, check out Deceased. It is super, super cool. I told all my friends about it. I'm like, man, you guys got to read this. This is one of the best stories I've read in a long time. And like I said, I like those Elseworld types what if stories. And that's what this is. It's not in main continuity. It's not in it's a part of the multiverse or whatever. And it's not canon. It's more of a what if, and the DC stuff. And they just are bringing it back for basically Red Hood is the main character in this one. And the first issue just came out and it's rad. It's really cool. That's all I'm going to say about it. So check out Deceased. And that's pretty much it. I haven't really done much else. I've been just kind of reading some comics here and there, listening to some music, and watching some TV with my wife, and playing some video games. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do after recording this, but I think I'm going to go watch Elizabeth play Skyrim. She's playing some Skyrim right now, so I'm excited about that. But thank you for listening to this episode of the Game or Die podcast. Like I said, I'm your host, Ryan Moore. You can follow me or find me at Twitter at TheMadman007. So TheMadman007. And please go to my website, gameordie.net. And that's where I write all my stuff, all my reviews and thoughts and stuff like that. And I've been writing a lot on the road lately, just tons of reviews. I haven't published a whole ton of them, but I do every once in a while when I feel like there's something I want to put out there, I'll publish a review or a think piece, I guess, or whatever. But thank you very much for listening. I hope you guys enjoy it. Like I said, if you need to write me, you can write at ryan@gameordie.net. That's my email address. You can reach me there, or like I said, on Twitter, or just go to the webpage gameordie.net. But that's it for me. Signing off until next time. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Killer Tofu! Bloatsburg is proud to welcome the Beats! Fast food feels fuzzy, 'cause it's made from stuff that's scuzzy. I always thought I was such a nerd. I refused to touch that strange bean curd. I wouldn't eat it, wow, but it ain't you. I-E-O, killer tofu. E-I-O-E-O, killer tofu. I eat my sugar cereal, but it makes my teeth bacterial. E-I-O, E-I-O.